Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor Jessup. Do any councillors wish to report any changes? No? Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. No legislative items tonight?
No.
No urgent matters? I have a couple of Mayor's announcements. We have a couple here. We have a new Burton's Reserve Playground. It's a community celebration on Sunday the 6th of April from 11:30 to 1:30 and everyone is welcome. So please come along and celebrate the new playground. And community information session, Let's Shape Our Future Together. It's on Sunday the 13th of April 2 to 4 in the Yornville Town Hall. So make contact with council if you'd like to find out some more information on that. I also I attended a couple of meetings this week. The first one was with the TAS Audit Office and it was to do with their new accounting rules. And so I thought that I would give the acting director an opportunity to answer a question that I had for that. So I know it's not in question time, but I'll do it now. I went to a meeting at the audit office about new accounting rules. Who does all the work to make these changes? Because I always wonder about all the new rules that get put upon us. And does the audit office help councils with that? So through you, I'd like to be able to ask the acting director that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended that session also. It's an online session. So to provide the audit office will help us. They'll provide information and they'll provide model statements for us to use. However, the work that goes into preparing our systems and implementing the changes will come from my team and I. So I guess this is one of the reasons that we continue to invest in our finance systems and processes over time. These new accounting standards will fit nicely with the upgrade of our new finance system. So we'll be able to incorporate those changes when we do the upgrade.
Well done. Thank you. I did find it informative. Also, I would like to just congratulate the Friends of Dover Medical Services. They had a barbecue to welcome the new doctors into the area on Friday and it was a lovely day and they've got a great write-up in today's Your News. So well done to those guys for having the initiative to do a nice and kind thing in your community. So well done to those people.
Very much appreciated by staff.
Yeah, and I think it's in today's society we tend to forget to say thank you to the people that do some good things. The CEO and I were at the official opening of the Link Road on Friday, which was good. I don't know whether you have driven it. The comments have majority been positive, which is good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that being, fully line marked and landscaped. So yeah, that was good.
And I was going to ask this question later, but while you're talking about it, so there is still, because I think we moved motions that there was a bit of a reserve area and some landscaping. I'm assuming they're waiting for the rain or just waiting to finish that.
They've got landscaping
There's
to
still
do.
more. There's still more work to do once they open the road, including that landscaping, to finalise. Yep.
Cool. So you've seen a plan?
Yep.
Yep. Cool.
No,
It's all been signed off on. So there's a significant reserve area.
Yeah. No, it's really good.
and the walking track has been used
Yeah.
quite a lot.
Very well.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right.
What a great asset to have that incorporated in that. So yeah, well done to our team with working with state growth and the government on that, all levels of government, which is a really good collaboration. It proves that what good things you can have when you work together. Neville Smith Forest Products announced the opening of their advanced manufacturing business with their pallets, and that's got a write-up in the Your News as well, so congratulations to them. And I know this is far south, but the Southport Hotel has some new licee and will open again before Easter. And I know that it's good news for locals because it is a place to gather. It's good for the shack owners for somewhere to go and meet up and have a meal. But it's good for the tourist industry to have somewhere for people to go. So congratulations on all the hard work that's gone in doing that. So yeah, so well done to everybody there. Okay. Public question time, 8.1.1. There was one question taken on notice from the previous meetings from Dr. Smith regarding the Space to Co booking system, and the response is on our website and included in the minutes. There were two questions given on notice from Mr. Jeffrey Swan regarding water testing and clarification of Yuan beaches. Responses are on our website and included in the minutes. 8.1.3, questions without notice. There were 3 questions emailed in for tonight's meeting from Irene Swan and Tobias Hengeveld. Yeah, Hengeveld, is it? Yeah. Concerning the salmon industry, responses are available on the website and included in the minutes. Sorry about that, Tobias. Now, I would normally welcome people to public question time, but we don't have anyone in the gallery tonight. So,
First time.
first time, yeah. So, yeah.
Everybody's happy.
8.2, deputations to council, Neil.
No.
Petitions,
No.
Neil. There is no planning authority reports for council to consider tonight. So we're up to 11. General reports and minutes presented in relation to the following matters: the CEO's operation report, the Mayor's activity report for February, and Southern Employment and Training Network statement of expenditure and quarterly report. Are there any councillors tonight that would like to table their activities?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak to their activities?
Oh, no, it's a quiet one.
No, yes, yes.
Yeah, I might speak to, sorry. I accepted an invitation that Salmon Tasmania made to all councillors in February to participate in a tour of salmon farming leases between Storm Bay and Bruny Island, so outside the Huon. It ran on Friday the 21st of February and ended up being timely because the reports of fish deaths in the Huon were coming out at that time. So I'm a fairly land-based person and I learn a lot around boaty people. It's outside my comfort zone. A number of other Southeastern Tasmanian councillors also attended, and so the sites weren't ours, but the information and ideas I think were important for the Huon Valley. So that then unidentified substance was a topic of discussion, with antibiotics being used for the 3rd time in 10 years. And I found myself relating the fish farm situation to land-based activities I'm more familiar with. I certainly know farmers using these medications with cattle or sheep, and of stock deaths occurring on land-based mammal farms. Do we hold these to account with the same standards for animal welfare and environmental impact? I also found myself wondering, are we being objective when we look at a beach in summer compared to a stinky seaweed-strewn winter beach? And who is most appropriately responsible for regulating and preventative engagement around the protection of our shared natural resources? I also raised the question of debris and was told that fish farm litter had dropped from 15% of coastal debris to 5%. I'm not sure that I'm convinced that 5% is okay, but I'm also far from comfortable with 95% of coastal debris being of other human origin. I recognise the salmon companies do coastal cleanups and commend this effort to take responsibility for other people's waste too. So in the end, we don't regulate most of that industry, and I do recognise the value of a locally produced food source, but I'm also a firm believer in always doing better. And the tour finished off with a visit to Tassell's Feeding Control Centre, which was really mind-boggling in terms of humans in front of banks of computer screens, and that it's this apparently automated system still has and actually really needs the human element in it. Apparently they'd set a new record in fish gaining a kilo of weight to 1.1 kilo of feed provided, which is that's mind-boggling. That's so far different from me chucking the cows a bale of hay. So it was a good learning opportunity and raised plenty of questions.
Thank you. I think we might have visited one pool a long time ago when we was working with the university on, that was to do with waste, wasn't it? Yeah, like land, the waste to have on land. But any other comments from activities? Thanks, Amy. No? And thanks for that, Amy, apart from the fact that I did ask you last meeting to talk about something that's relevant in your activities, so thank you. Just made you know that I wasn't trying to stop you from speaking, I was just saying it's good to talk about what's relevant in your activities that you table. So
No, follow the
thank you for
process.
that. Thank you. Okay, so 11.003/25. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the general reports and minutes for the period 1 to 28 February 25 be noted, received and noted? Yep, Councillor Jessup and Councillor Gibson. Do you wish to speak to anything in those?
Not generally. I have a couple of smaller points, but I'm happy for other people to go first.
Do we have any other comments? Yes? Yes, yeah.
General comments, yeah. In the business enterprise unit, I'm not clear about the thin market grant from Jason. I was wondering if that could be explained.
Sure. So after our unsuccessful grant application for the general practice sustainability and viability grants that the state government had out, we got converted into, instead moved into this thin market grant stream, which it's a long story, so I won't try to do all of it, but it had actually been trundling along for quite some time. And it seemed like there was actually one pool of funding for these various grants. Thin market is where we're actually working with the federal government to understand, and they've effectively got it's almost a consultant engagement process where they're actually really in partnership looking at the viability of our centre and working with us on actions that they could invest in, so that if we are successful for the grant, it comes preloaded with, this is what we are going to deliver with this grant, with the express outcome being to ensure the financial viability of that centre and make it sustainable into the future. It's been a totally unique process to work with because they are so engaged and literally helping in the writing of the grant and the exploration of your business. We're expecting to see should say it in here, I haven't read this for a week or so, but we're expecting to see the report out of that at the end of March, which is any day now, and then to understand whether we've been successful for funding before the end of the financial year so that we can budget for it for next year.
Thank you, that's very comprehensive. I had, what else? I was pretty impressed with the medical services reduced wait times and doubling by half and doubling the available sessions. That's obviously something to be congratulated. I wondered how many people attended the cause training in the social resilience unit. Was that well attended, or that's an area close to my heart?
Yeah, I don't know this year. I did do it last year, I think, when they had it.
We'll take on notice the actual number.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have those to hand, but we can get you the number.
In NRM, I was just wondering whether when we do weed management for an outbreak, what our process is for alerting neighbours and areas that may well have been sort of affected by blown seed or whatever, so that they're ready to identify and jump on any further outbreak.
Any re-emergence.
Some sort of prevention. I just wondered whether we did anything in that space.
Yes, pretty bad. Yeah, we do in some in some cases. Depends on sort of how that weed is spread. But I know with ragwort we certainly do engage with neighbouring landholders. But what I'll do is I'll take it on notice and give you a more fulsome answer in terms of how we consider that and our approach in that space.
Thanks, that'd be great. Again in NRM, the farm dam enhancement that was attended seemed like a really useful thing. I wonder, I mean, that was attended by some council officers. How is that going to be disseminated to dam owners in the Huon?
Yeah.
The take, and in what way, I guess. So is that
Through you, Mayor. So currently, NRM provides a lot of technical advice to landowners looking to improve the sort of ecological functionality of their properties. And this training sort of adds to that sort of repertoire that they have in terms of advising on some of those matters. I think they've just completed the training, so they are considering how we can roll it out. It's got dual benefits because it improves the ecological function of the dam itself, but also then it captures and sort of maintains a high quality water availability for the stock and things like that. So they're looking at sort of partnerships in that space and how we can sort of promote and roll this thing out. Because it's a great project. I found it really interesting.
Yeah,
to sort
sounds
of read
interesting.
through.
Thank you. That was all.
Right. Yes, Amy.
Further on the farm dams, do we have a sense of how that works in with current state legislation on farm dams, which enables and I think my background says that there's actually an obligation to maintain things like dam walls as clear of vegetation so that you don't risk tree roots or falling trees reducing the safety and integrity of a dam, which could create a worse problem in terms of, a flood event or downstream damage.
Through you, Mayor. So yes, so certainly the training was cognizant of some of those things. It's trying to, as I said, it's a dual benefit approach. It's cognizant of the fact that the dam is a dam and it has a function and it has risks associated with it and needs to be maintained as such. And then, but is also looking at, and in some cases, through stock exclusion and things like direct stock exclusion, and then rather carrying water to a trough, you almost limit the impact on those dam walls and on those entry points. So yes, was part of the training to be mindful of the legislation in that space. Most of the sort of, again, I didn't attend the training, but I asked for all the material because I was already interested in it. Most of the sort of actions are soft actions in that space. So it's exclusion and then more herbaceous replanting and things like that, not really the woody stuff that is going to have those root systems that undermine. But yeah, broadly was aligned with that legislation.
Any others?
Yes. I just have a question on if there's been any progress. I'm just looking at my notes on the CLFC in providing childcare services.
The CFLC.
That's the one.
Yeah, Child and Family Learning Centre. Yes, the first of their engagements was held 2-3 weeks ago now, over in the library at Huonville. Well attended. I reckon there would have been 50 odd people there. So council attended with various hats on, from community services to assets. I went to it. The mayor went to it. There was some good information shared, but it was the get to know you, start of a government engagement. The next week, the first of what they call LEGS, which is Local Engagement Group, is commencing. And so that's where we're starting to actually get into the detail, share data to evidence the needs, etc. And ultimately, as the department has said, help the design of this thing be shaped by the community's needs. So we're curious to see where that all goes, and council will certainly be coming with our priority action, which is a federal election priority piece for us as well, as it was for the last state election, that there is a significant existing demand, unmet demand in Huonville and the whole valley for childcare. We expected this CFLC was going to alleviate that pressure. So we want to see to what extent it will do that. We're also really interested in this in the last night's budget announcement around a building education, early education fund, so more federal money coming in, and we've already raised that topic with our federal member Julie Collins. So we've got a plan B because we just desperately need this support for existing demand. But then when the activity test changes and all families have access to 3 days of childcare without a means test like current, I don't actually know what that demand will look like down here, but I suspect it will be significant, and it'll certainly be more than what we currently have, and we already can't meet that demand. So we have a growing problem, and we are representing that strongly in that CFLC engagement.
Before we come back to you, Mark, unless you have you got no? You, Andrew? No. I'd just like to congratulate one of our doctors at Dover as being accepted as a fellow of the RAC. Was it the RAC? Yeah. And our Chieftain Childcare Centre, our early learning, exceeded their ratings.
Yep.
So well done to them as well. So I'd just like to make note of that. And
That's the quality assurance process in childcare. So performing, we're providing quality care to our community, which is great to see that rating.
Yeah. So I just through Andrew, I'd like to be able to pass on that he gives them our congratulations on that. Just in our NRM that there was the nursery received an additional plant request, bring the total to 23 for the upcoming planting season. So they're being asked a lot more for resources than that. So, and they have got a new volunteer. So I'm sure they would love more. So if you're looking to volunteer, I'm pretty sure they would appreciate some more help in that area there.
Really well run little nursery. It's great work.
Yeah. Well done to them. And I did note in the recreational services that the Learn to Swim at Port Ewan is well underway and the classes are full, which is really good. And that February stats are higher than from what we had for previous years when we were open, and that the pool is getting a lot of use and the Saturday opening extended hours are being well received. So, congratulations on that to the staff as well, on filling all those and doing a really good job down there. So well done to those. Yes.
Close now. The Clean Energy Upgrade Fund. Congratulations for winning a grant for that. And I note that we would have talked about that 18 months ago when we talked about climate stuff. So, and that's no reflection that it's taken too long, but these things take time to evolve. Well, just wondering what sort of scale are we looking at? One building with one solar panel, or are we looking at buckets of solar panels?
I'll answer it, and then these guys can give
Yes.
can improve it with facts.
Yeah.
But just to point out the grant, I think it was about 8 months overdue in announcing that grant. So it was a significant delay. So we were very relieved to see it. And I just want to point out before I throw it to these guys that we had a particular plan at a point in time that was 8 months ago. We've subsequently done energy tenders. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and things move on and directions might change. So effectively, where our intent is to put solar panels on our buildings to reduce operational costs and reduce emissions. So we're now working through, does that initial plan still make sense, and just looking to actually optimise those under what we now know 8 months down the track when we've done more work. So
is it a dollar amount or a square meterage amount or a kilowatt amount?
It's a dollar amount, funding amount, and I think these guys will know the actual.
I can tell you the kilowatt amount for the solar panels. So it's effectively 100 kilowatt solar panels on Port Ewan Sports Centre with a 14 kilowatt hour energy storage, 3 14 kilowatt hour energy storage units, as well as some other accessories in that space. So that's to obviously improve the efficiency, but also for emergency response. So if people need to sort of be there for an extended period of time, we've got backup battery. Southbridge has got 440 watt panels. Also has a few other sort of improvements, energy improvements in that space. The hub has got 440 watt panels. Sorry, I haven't done the calcs for these ones. I thought you might ask us, so I had it up. The depot again, about 440 watt panels. So it's quite significant solar panel or energy generation across all these buildings.
So we just need to make sure that with the money that was asked for and the money we've got, as time marches on, that we can still afford all of that, because prices change.
Prices are falling, aren't they?
Well, not all of them. Not all of them.
Also.
I had one question, Tyler.
Electrical installation costs. So while solar panels and accessories might be getting cheaper,
The mileage more expensive.
all the rest of it goes up. Yeah.
No, but well done, and that's
So, sorry, Mayor. So the idea is to have further investigation to make sure it's spent for buck and not causing long-term burden. So we make sure it's positive return before we put the solar panel on the roof. So the scope may vary from the full scope we proposed, but the goal is the same.
And that was a federal government grant? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, before you close, yes, Paul, you have one, then Toby.
I was just going to ask a comment on the Cygnet Wombat crossing briefly, and start by acknowledging that a few shop owners who were being affected hadn't somehow found out that it was happening that day. And I mean, I'm sure we'll be looking at ways to improve that. But the main thing is to really thank everybody who's involved for the incredible responsiveness to fix the problem and to change which car parks were being closed, and to, that was really very much appreciated by the shop owners.
Yes, Toby?
I can ask my question now while we're on the topic of solar, because I did have a question for Councillor Questions. It's just in response to that grant and reflecting back on the climate emergency motion that we passed. Is there a way to integrate a bulk buy discount for residents, recognising that a lot of solar is quite unaffordable for a lot of people in the Huon Valley with the low SES communities? So is there a way that that can be integrated into that project, or has it been considered yet?
Into the project we've just got the funds for? No, that's a specific purpose for our buildings.
Yeah, that's fine. But
Can we leverage off
can
that?
we leverage off that, off a bulk buy discount? If we're already spending the money on all these solar panels, how do we share that, saving with a community that probably couldn't afford it without a discount somewhere along the lines?
I'll take the question on notice and come back to you, but my immediate comment is going to be the resources required to spin that up and to do that is going to be significant, and I will need to give it some proper thought before we respond to you.
Any other?
Yes, Deb, I do have a question, but given that Paul touched on the crossing, perhaps I should touch on my question. Yeah. Should I? Would this be the good time?
Yeah, no, go for it. Okay.
So I agree. I think the shop owners are reasonably happy with the situation now. But I'm just wondering if we could do some work around safety of the crossing. Because today somebody just walked out in front of me without looking. It's been happening. It's a really big crossing, but people just expect that everyone's going to stop, and everyone's not going to stop, because we as drivers need to re-educate. I stopped, of course, because I'm a slow driver anyway, but I just wondered if we could liaise with the schools on a council level and just have a chat to the kids and really teach them the safe way to cross at a crossing, because I'm really concerned that a child's going to see the lines and just run straight across the crossing, thinking that that is a safe place to cross the road. You see it up at this one as well. Cars just don't stop. I've had oh my gosh moments where my heart's been in my mouth. And they've been with adults that have been walking them across, and the cars just do not stop. So although I hope the cars do stop and most of them probably will, I'm just wondering if we can back that up with some sort of program or just nothing major, but just maybe a chat to the kids or at an assembly and teach them the correct way. You know, even though it's a crossing, they need to look both ways to go across that crossing and stand there until it's safe to go. Because I think people just expect that cars will stop and cars just don't always see a crossing. I mean, how you'd miss it, I really don't know. But anyways,
Yeah. Look, we have a couple of opportunities. We have Road Safety Week that we do, and that's not now, which is a bit of a thing. We could reinforce it. There is once we've got a bit of more of a program in place for that. One of those is liaison with the schools over learning to drive and different things, but we could incorporate it in that just to reinforce it. But I tend, sometimes it's just we could even speak
flyers to the teachers, maybe.
Well,
Traffic.
yeah, I think what you're talking about is ultimately, you know, there is a responsibility on pedestrians. They have the right to cross the road and they do take priority, but they've got to take responsibility for their own safety, that if they might have the right, but they're really going to get hurt if they get hit by a car. A pretty simple thing, just thinking as you're talking, to get some Corflute signs printed on both sides of that crossing. It just reminds people what I learned when I was getting taught to cross a road was to look both ways and actually to make eye contact with the driver so they know that they've seen you and they're slowing down. Pretty simple to do that. That's right there. It's direct. If we start with something like that, that's pretty straightforward.
I know it's not particularly our remit, so to speak, but I just know because kids watch television and they're on their little iPads and you know, there's all this thing about cartoon characters with games crossing at the crossings and everything else. And I just don't think that they understand entirely when they haven't had one before that they do need to stop and just double check. Okay, so that's good. Also, I've been asked by some of the Cygnet residents to ask about the 40-kilometre round painting on the road before you get to crossings. Apparently there are some areas that have a nice round 40-kilometre speed limit to remind drivers that it's a 40-kilometre. Yes, the round.
Recommend a 40-kilometre round.
A round.
Yeah.
What would you call that? A round painting with 40 kilometres inside of it.
Yep.
I don't know what you would call that.
Not a 40.
A signage on the road. That's what we're talking about. So I don't know if we need to erect some additional signs to just pop people's memory. I just am asking the question because I was asked about it and I said I would ask the question.
Because I've run out of talent for knowing the road rules at this level, but separate to, we can do that. But as you know, we're still working with DSG on that wider Cygnet Street, Mary Street safety improvements.
Well, that could be part of that even.
And we'll just I'd just take that question and we just include that in our discussions with DSG, which are ongoing and going very positively at the moment.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's really just the kids thing that bothers me the most.
And one thing, Mr. Mayor, as you might recall, before council made the decision to advocate for the 40 kilometer per hour change, a traffic survey was conducted along Mary Street showing actually the 85th percentile means the vast majority of the drivers, they're traveling around 37, 38 kilometers per hour already. So we don't believe there's a speeding issue there. I agree with you, probably one or two may exceed that speed limit, but the majority of people along the road actually comply with 40 kilometers per hour speed limit.
And I think that's fair to say because it does get a bit congested and there are certain days where it is more congested than others. My issue mostly is now that the crossing wasn't there before, so cars didn't have to stop. Even if they were doing 40, they could still continue on. Now there's people using the crossing, they have to stop. So whatever that takes to get those cars to stop, because I've seen them not stop already, but they will eventually. But it's close to a school, it's close to buses, it's close to children. I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
That was all.
No, that's all. Yes, Amy.
I'd like to really support Councillor Armstrong's request or recommendation there. I think as council we have a role in community leadership. We are aware that road safety around crossings is an issue, and I don't know whether it's become more of an issue because there will be a number of factors. One is maybe kids with, screens. One is that electric vehicles can sneak up on you without being as easily heard as noisy old-fashioned engines. But I do believe we have a role in this. I want to comment that Huon Valley Theatre Company did an awesome YouTube video that's worth sharing around the community in terms of road safety and not using your mobile phone while you're driving. But yeah, we support Road Safety Week, but I think that actually discharges some of our duty in community leadership if we pursue and promote some more of that. And I think it has to be through the doing rather than necessarily through more science. But we have awesome educational institutions through the valley, so there are great ways to roll that out, including through our children's services and teaching kids from really early on how you approach a road and check for safety and take your time. So
that could be a role that councillors play as well in our community. But I think that now that you've brought that up and we've spoke about it for what we can do once we're talking with DSG on Mary Street improvements, and I'm sure through the Director of Infrastructure we'll be able to work and do something. And yeah,
It's just because it's different. Once people realise it's different and, there's some education from parents with kids or whatever, I'm sure it'll settle in quite nicely. But
it's only a matter of probably speaking to the Inspector for Police, and if he's got an officer in Signet that can nip into the school and have a little talk to the kids or let them know. Yep, that's it. Yeah.
that'll work, and
All right.
what we can do.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Councillor Armstrong. Do I have any others? Do you like to close, Councillor?
I'm happy, thank you.
You're happy now? All right. Okay. Well, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Okay. 11.5 now. We're up to workshops. Would you like to?
I'll just
Yep,
leave it
yep.
as
As
read, yeah.
read? Yeah. Okay. We have that. We had no councillor questions taken on notice from February's council meeting. There was no questions given on notice tonight. We've already done a couple without notice, but is there any other questions? Yes, councillor?
And this relates to that previous workshop where we discussed long-term financial plan scenarios and our rates structure and how our rates are decided. There's been some really great discussion in those workshops about different ways of doing that and why we do it the way we do. My question or request is, could we document some of that and bring that to next meeting so that it's on more transparently on the record in terms of why we have and the discussion being, credit to Andrew, Councillor Burgess for raising the issue of the difference between residential rating and business or industrial ratings. So that question was really interesting, and in my mind I sort of went, oh well, a business can tax deduct its rates, but then it was interesting to find that if you got a 30% deduction on your industrial or commercial rates, you actually ended up below the residential rate. So I guess my question is, could we see a paper to next meeting with some of the examples of that and some of the options of those different scenarios worked through with just a little bit of commentary? I'm not after a huge document, but the process of that, because I know we do periodically spend time communicating to our residents about how rates are worked out. The thinking behind that and how to find the equity between the different classes of rating is part of that question, and I think transparency would be useful.
All right. I'll pass that through to the general manager.
Yeah, we were just whispering about Easter, which makes things a little bit tight next month, but it should be doable. We've got all the content there, and effectively it's a report on the examples we use to discuss differential ratings.
Yeah,
So yep, that's
Right.
no problem.
thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? Okay. Are there any notices of motions for tonight's meeting? No. Okay, we're up to 15.1. Report number 15.009/25. Priority Reform Program Consultation Discussion Paper on Targeted Amendments to the Local Government Act 1993. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Armstrong, do you wish to speak to this? Right, do I have any other comments on this? Yes? Councillor Gibson?
I'm not sure if this is the right one because there's a couple, but is this the one we're discussing the method of appointment of a deputy mayor?
No, that's
No,
not
that's-
Excellent.
Yep.
They are a little hard to get, easy to get lost in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in
Yeah.
there.
Do I have any other questions on this one? You don't wish to close, councillor? All right, well, I'll put that motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. Report number 15.010/25, Local Government Electoral Bill Discussion Paper. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Gibson and seconder. Councillor Burgess. Councillor Gibson.
I waded my way through all of this and it seemed generally pretty good and sensible. I did wonder about the election of the deputy mayor. I tend to agree that the current system is not good because you can't, got to either be one or the other. And I wondered whether you could just put your hand up for mayor or deputy mayor. The person who gets the most amount of votes is the mayor. The next person don't get deputy mayor, which would be a very simple way of doing it. And then you're going to get sort of a breadth of,
Really thought about that.
it's democratic and it's seemed like a good idea to me.
Well, I have a potential amendment to this recommendation, which includes this point
Okay.
around, not the same as you, I hadn't thought of that perspective before. I think there's some really great things in this sort of proposed reform. Things like the caretaker legislation.
Yeah.
The voting methods becoming more hybrid, which potentially can save council a little bit of money when it comes to elections. But the 2 points were the election of deputy mayor, which I think should stay as a directly elected position, because I think removing a process of democracy, which democracy works best when there's more avenues to participate, but doesn't necessarily guarantee that councils across Tasmania are going to have received more qualified deputy mayors. So I just think it's a risk to whether do you take that, that process away from electors to actually directly elect their deputy mayor, or do you put it back around the table of councillors not being able to guarantee that the best deputy mayor will be selected? Where I think if they're democratically elected, it's always the best outcome because they've been voted by people, by electors.
What do you think about my proposal?
I'm not sure about your
That is
proposal.
democratic,
Yeah,
essentially, but it gets around that issue that's.
I'm not sure because I think there's two very, being in the role now and seeing what our mayor does, I couldn't be the mayor. I just, it's too much of a workload for somebody in my type of career progression. But I think it does depend on regions. I don't know how you elect a mayor and then the second person gets deputy mayor. I'm not sure. I'm happy with that discussion. The second point, though, of that amendment is the point on Reform 13, which was the party affiliation part, which we've said that we don't, currently in the report says we don't support including party affiliation on ballot papers. I personally, someone who's a member of a party and I don't hide it, I think in interest of transparency, your party affiliation should be upfront first and foremost. I just think we need to change that to be supportive of that. Doesn't necessarily mean that parties become more involved with local government. That will happen regardless, but it does ensure transparency. And that's coming from someone who's a member of a party. I'd love to be transparent in every opportunity possible where my affiliation sits, whether you have one or you don't. It should be from the beginning. I don't think it disadvantages anyone. So there are 2 points I potentially have an amendment on, but I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts.
May I, through you, Mayor? Councillor Gibbs, can I just go back to what you were just saying about voting for mayor or deputy mayor? Do you mean separately, like a single vote, like not in the air clerk system, like not how we do it now? Yeah.
Standard hair clerk system, so you put your hand up for mayor/deputy mayor.
Yep.
And whoever gets the most amount of votes is the mayor, the next one down becomes the deputy. Sorry.
Wouldn't you gather goats? Goats. Gosh, I'll get banned off Facebook for mentioning goats. Signet side joke, it's all right. Wouldn't you gather votes though as you go along? Because the system, like you get, do you know what I mean?
In the hair clerk system, it comes down in the end to 2 people for mayor and the final votes.
Yeah, it does.
preference
That's
of
after
one.
everybody else has been omitted.
One person ends up being the mayor.
Yeah.
The person who just misses out, which was in this case was me,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's irrelevant, would then be the deputy mayor.
So how would your idea differ to what already happens then?
Because I didn't put my hand up for deputy mayor,
Oh, okay.
so I'm not in the deputy mayor race, and that's what they're trying to get
Right.
rid of.
Yeah.
But we've got some
Yeah,
clarification
so
here.
just some clarification, the election of mayor, deputy mayor, as you've suggested, is a preferential system, it's not hair clerk.
Ah.
Well, the voting could still be whoever got the most number of votes.
Yes, it would still be the most number, but it'll be based on just preferential. People at the bottom will just roll off and go up to the top.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking.
It's
That's why I was
not actually hair
confused.
clerk, it won't be quota based.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. That's all right. That's why I got myself confused, I think, because I was thinking the same, they drop off and then they just move up. But yeah, but I see what you mean. I didn't realise that you didn't actually go for deputy mayor at the time of the election.
Yeah. So currently, just some background for councillors on this, currently you can only nominate for mayor or deputy mayor. So that really does restrict opportunities for candidates to say, well, am I really going to be, I could have a shot at being mayor, but if I don't get that, well, I could be a good deputy mayor. So this is the issue which has raised the concern. You're actually excluding people from running from the office of mayor. So the proposal is, do we keep it the same and then somebody's excluded? Do we look at a different sort of manner? So the manner has been suggested is around the table. You might want to have a suggestion that you could potentially nominate for both or something like that. I don't know how that works.
Well, that's for them to sort out, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's something you've raised as a concern. So if you want to include something in this opinion,
Councillor Thorpe, that around the table is not very democratic, and I think something. No, because he
Well,
knows
most
people.
political parties choose their leaders around the table, don't they? So that's pretty democratic.
That is democratic.
However, the problem there is that we might have a new councillor that's never had anything to do with council before and has no idea about anything, but they might be popular.
They might win the mayoral job.
It also
It's
puts,
happened before.
if you're in a council where the political parties are very much at play, it puts the power back in the political parties to choose who deputy mayor is, which is what I'm saying I don't support. Which, yeah,
I don't support it either.
no. But I wonder if the comment around being able to nominate for mayor and deputy mayor with a clause that if you're elected for both, you take the highest office first or whatever, may prevent people, may be suitable for people that want to run for both mayor and deputy mayor to try their luck at both of them.
Probably complicated.
But I think if you have to run for mayor and deputy mayor on the same ballot, you could be mayor and you could be deputy mayor.
I think the electorate would be very confused.
Well, I
very
think so
confused.
too.
My concern is we're making the positions sort of equivalent. So is a deputy mayor the same as a mayor? And I think they are two quite distinctly different
Very different.
positions. You've got one who is the leader of the council and one who is able to deputise and do other, the handmaiden roles.
Understand.
Toby is very good at. But I think my concern is if we set this position up that it's the winner and the second, isn't that setting up a conflictual situation like we see in some councils where you have, the council are full of all the mayoral people who didn't get the job, and there's a few councils around like that, and all they do is spend the time shooting at each other and causing
We're not
mayhem.
like that in
No, we've never been like that in the Huon. But I think there is value in somebody who says, I want to be the deputy mayor because I have a full-time job, for example, and I'm very happy to support the mayor and stand in when the mayor's not available, but also maybe to develop that skill set over time. And I think that in itself is a righteous and valuable role, as opposed to saying it's the person who got the job and the person who just missed out by 10 votes. Could you imagine the sort of setting up of each other that could lead to? Not that we'd ever do that here. So I'm quite happy with the status quo. I don't like the elected from the table because I think you're right. Then you get power groups and So I'm happy with the current position, I suppose, is my view.
I think one of the things that they spoke about when I was at the Legat meeting was having the mayoral role, and then around the table, not electing a deputy mayor, electing a deputy mayor when needed. So you put your hand up if you had the time, like if the mayor was having a month off or whatever. So around the table,
Acting mayor almost.
yeah, it's an acting deputy. Yeah, it's an acting mayor. Yes.
So that sort of abolishes a deputy position
Yes.
altogether.
Yeah, that was one of the.
You would then have to have everybody up to speed with exactly what's happening.
But all I'm doing is just putting out there. That's what
So
one of the things that was discussed.
Hopefully that would be up to us to say, well, who's the most competent and who would represent the council best in the mayor's absence for a month. So hopefully we'd all have enough commitment to the role, not to.
Well, we done that in a sense when Toby stood for and stepped down, done the right thing and stepped down while he was on election.
And a brilliant deputy.
But we done that round. Yeah, we done that round the table. Yeah, honest. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, all I'm doing is one of the discussions that was there was that exact scenario.
I just don't like the bride and the bridesmaid scenario because I just think that sets people up to be nasty. The other one, it's just, so there's two papers here, isn't there? Because there's a targeted amendments as well.
Yeah,
It's
we've
just-
done the targeted
Yeah,
amendments.
we've done them once. Yeah, yeah.
Well, just while we're talking about that, I certainly the point 6 about the learning and development objectives. I'm really keen that we emphasise that, because we did all that work. We did a week's work, and to be honest, the modules, I've done one of the modules, and I learned that we had a constitution. My goodness, that was a great insight. They're not very good, and the week that we spent with Matt and the other staff here, I think it was much more valuable than doing those online things, to be honest. And I'd like to make sure that gets recognised as the sign-off for that learning. Because there's no, and it might be a curriculum that's produced by the Office of Local Government, but I think that's a much more valuable thing than frankly doing some second-rate PowerPoints online.
Have you still not done yours?
No, I've finished the first module, and as I said, I learned we had a constitution. It's a valuable learning for me.
Amy, did you put your hand up? Yeah.
So in regard to those 2 points from Councillor Thorpe, I'm actually comfortable with the proposal as it stands. I think part of the point of the proposal is to simplify the election process, and I agree with that. And I would hope that, and there's certainly, there becomes a duty when you sit around the table and consider, do we need a deputy mayor and who should fill that role to support the mayor? There becomes, you take on a different duty to that when you're trying to campaign and get a seat at the table. So you have a duty to enable the function of your council. And I think in terms of loss of democracy, those decision makers are themselves elected and then bring that to the decision. So I'm comfortable with that proposal, and I recognise there's pros and cons for people who want to put their hand up for different roles. And that potentially changes during the course of a 4-year term too, doesn't it? For all of us in various ways. So I think that creates a simpler, still adequately democratic and more adaptive process, which is useful. What was the second aspect?
So, just correctly, are you saying that you'd go with the status quo then? Or you go with this?
I'd go with this
around the
proposal to remove deputy mayor elections from the community election process and bring it to the council table.
You'd just do the council table method.
Yeah.
So how do we go about this? We're agreeing on all, or do we have to move something to have it separated? Yeah. Yep.
Yes,
You do a straw.
the council of thought just wants to get some feel
Yep.
before moving an amendment.
Yep. That's cool. Yep.
Form 13, the party affiliations being recognised on your ballots during election process. Like, I don't think we can prevent political parties being involved with local government. And I just think in the interest of transparency, people should know from the beginning where your affiliation is, if any.
I agree with that, but I don't see that it necessarily needs to be mandated and declared up front as another, label or category or whatever.
I don't think you can now, though, can you? You can't say Toby Thorpe Liberal Party or something on your ballot,
Yeah, you can say that in the text of your candidate statement, I think.
but not on the ballot paper.
That's correct.
And you're saying you would like to see it on the ballot paper.
That's also from a sense I'd love people to know, be very transparent in myself and where my affiliation is, but also for everybody.
But you ran as an independent, even though you're a member of the Labor Party. Are you suggesting that you would still run as an independent, but you'd declare that you are a member of the Labor
Your affiliation, yeah. I
So
don't
does that
think
mean
you
we're
can-
asking for party involvement in the election? Because you'd have to be a certified candidate or something then, to put Labor Party on your ballot.
Yeah.
I don't know if the parties want, I'm not a member of the party, so I don't know if they want to do it.
There is an endorsement process, but
If I can just clarify the reform, so it's established that nomination by a registered party is to be included in the information published by the Electoral Commission and printed on the ballot paper. So it's not simply if I'm standing as an independent, but I'm a member of the Liberal Party or whatever, I don't have to say that because you're not nominated. This is nominated.
Standing for the Greens.
Yes,
as I
yes,
was.
yes.
Because you went through a pre-selection
Yeah, absolutely.
process, yeah.
So it doesn't actually, in that sense, it doesn't mandate that an individual would need to declare that party. It doesn't mandate that an individual's party would be shown on the ballot paper if they make their own nomination, or if their party chooses, for whatever reason, not to nominate candidates at local government level. If it's whatever federal party. It is. And I think that's my sense, is it makes it more complex. We know what the gold standard is in terms of transparency. And that ought to be practiced by all candidates in their candidate statement. And I'm sure that that material would be captured through the election period in the community discourse, which doesn't mean that it's heard by everyone, but the cost and the technicalities of making it mandated are too high.
All right, so you've got the
So-
fuel. Have you got a,
This is the amendment I'd like to move. Is that A, the report on draft submission of the local government electoral bill discussion paper be received and noted. B, a submission be made in relation to local government electoral bill discussion paper as set out in attachment 2 to this report, subject to the following change. And that change be to amend council's comment and submission for part remove the direct election of the deputy mayor. The proposal for the removal of direct election of deputy mayor be not supported, and that this removal of the election removes a process of democracy for electors to decide on who their elected officials are to be.
does Toby have a,
Not
yeah, and not 13.
So changing it from supporting it to opposing it.
Yep.
With more words.
To provide some context.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So seconded by councillor.
Councillor Gibson moved the original motion.
Okay. There you go. Councillor Jessup, so now we've already, do you wish to speak to it any more? Okay, well, we might go to the vote on, do we need to do that for the,
Yes.
okay, so all those in favour of the amendment to B in the recommendation? All those in favour?
Can you read that again, please?
Yep.
I can read that, Mayor. So the main changes to paragraph B, a submission be made in relation to the local government electoral bill discussion paper as set out in attachment 2 to the report, subject to the following change. Amend council comment and submission for part, remove the direct election of deputy mayor, to the proposal for removal of direct election of deputy mayor not be supported. The removal of this election removes a process of democracy for electors to decide on who their elected officials are to be.
So at the moment, we're supporting the removal? Yeah, so,
We're voting on supporting
Yeah.
the status quo
Yeah.
as opposed to changing.
of the,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
All right. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Burgess, Gibson, Doyle, Thorpe, Armstrong and Jessup. And those against the amendment is councillor Robertson. And that has succeeded.
So the amendment becomes the
The
motion,
motion.
Mayor, and you,
Now,
if there's, unless there's any other discussions.
So, sorry, it's through there. So basically, we've just voted to put back what we already had,
To the same.
so
which is why I was thinking, like, are we actually having to have a,
We're in our submission. and
yes,
our-
I know, I know, but
It's the
it's
best
just.
worst option.
So now we go back to,
have to do this, really.
now we go back to voting on the original motion. We don't have to do the first and second, we've already.
Correct,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah.
as
So-
amended.
as amended. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. Well done, everyone. We're up to
I really overthought that.
report number 15.011/25, Development Assessment Panel DAP Draft Bill. I refer the councillor's recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Gibson.
I have an amended motion, just to shorten the process,
Yeah.
which is, I've circulated to it already, which is just to slightly reinforce our position by saying that, including following words, that the proposed DAP process removes planning decisions from our democratically elected council, who represent the broad spectrum of the Huon Valley residents, and hands it to a small panel appointed by the minister. It also removes any planning appeal. We see this as a backward step for democracy. And then also to finish the submission, the preamble to the submission with, for these reasons, Huon Valley Council does not support this bill. So it's exactly the same, but
Is there a seconder to the amendment to the motion?
I'm so sorry, Paul. I lost my page. I'm not having a very good evening. Could you read that again?
It's this one.
It's on your table.
Oh, it's here.
It's one.
Oh, that's why I can't find it. I worked all weekend. I'm a bit fatigued. Sorry, hold up.
You want Paul to clarify a little bit more, Deb?
Okay,
Are you
now.
all right?
Yep, thank you.
We're still doing this, we'd still do the submission that we've got. You're just changing the motion slightly. And we say in the submission that we don't support
Yeah.
them, don't we?
Yeah.
You're just twisting the sword a bit.
I would say this after this was seconded normally, but the reason being that when you go through and support lots of amendments through the thing, it starts to sound like you're supporting the new bill. When we're not, I just want to be really clear that we're actually not supporting the amended bill. That's the only reason for putting it in there.
Well, second,
You want to second that?
Further discussion?
All right. So do you want to, now that you've got a seconder?
Well, as I said, I just wanted to make it really clear that Huon Valley Council doesn't support the DAB bill. That has been clear from the outset, and when you get as I said, when there's a whole lot of amendments that you're supporting, it can start to look like you're supporting and a lot of the amendments are improvements, but it doesn't change the core problem with the DAB, which has been very, very clearly written out by in the report that there's no real need for it. It's against democratic processes. It allows. I've got this whole list of reasons why you don't want the DABs. It's got the same basic flaws as the original. It allows property developers to bypass local councils, communities, which I don't think is a good idea. It doesn't really manage conflicts of interest very well. There's no right of appeal except to go to the Supreme Court, which is, it changes it from being a planning appeal to actually being a court appeal. There's got to be a legal reason to go to the Supreme Court. It increases ministerial power over the planning system and increases, as has been said in the report, increases politicisation of critical planning. And I think it makes a mockery of the sort of work we're doing in strategic planning. The council does all this work on strategic planning. We decide what we're trying to do, and then the minister comes in and just says, "No," and we don't want to do that because of whatever. So I think we should stick to our guns and be very clear that we don't support the bill.
It's a scary bill.
Yeah,
It's scary.
There's councils who don't like, and we know we don't like those very difficult planning decisions because they're really hard. But that's what we're elected to do, and I think you just have to take those really hard decisions.
Yes.
I'm a very strong supporter of social housing, and I believe it's got a really important role in our community. And I am a bit disgusted that the minister has used a couple of reasonable challenges by local government against social housing developments that did, by the way, result largely in those developments going ahead with some improvements. But he's used that as a stalking horse for this. Yeah, I know in our own discussions here locally, we've had to have firm discussions with social housing developers who wanted to take a maybe less than optimal outcome that would harm neighbouring properties, and we've had to work with them, and it's delayed the plan. But yeah, that's why we provide a whole heap of professional planners, and as said, that's why we have a strategy, and we've spent, God knows, $250,000, I suppose, on developing those strategies over the last couple of years. And it's just, the whole premise of the minister can make a better decision is just so flawed. Particularly some of the ministers we've had as planning ministers. Anyway, moving on from that. So I'm very much opposed to this. And the other irony of it, we do all the work anyway. So the council has to do all the assessments, all the work on it, and then we hand it over to the minister, who allegedly can make a better decision than us working in the planning authority. And his papers also said that, you know, we are one of the most efficient states in terms of planning approvals. And, you know, again, I don't necessarily think the minister could be any more efficient than that, because he's still relying on us to do the work and things like that. So I think it's just a very, it's such it's such a transparent play for power, which I won't go as far as saying is corrupted, but I would certainly say it is ultimately corruptible, and that's a flaw. You've got a lot more people to corrupt around this table than one minister.
Yes,
And
so-
we have to all declare any donations, whereas
Absolutely, and it's very transparent to the public. It's not made in a minister's room in the top of Murray Street, etc., etc.
Sorry, Mayor, just to clarify, the proposal isn't that the minister's going to make the decision. The proposal is that there would be development assessment panels established by the Tasmanian Planning Commission. But again,
Which
it
are
is,
not
it is,
transparent.
it is correct that
Which are
council
not
would still have to do almost identical work that it would be to assess a planning application. And ultimately, there is absolutely no guarantee there's going to be any different decision made by the Tasmanian Planning Commission than that would be made by a council.
And
The issue has been
those-
the appeal
Yeah.
difference.
So the appeal, well, it basically closed down appeals, but the minister's appointed decision makers, are they doing public hearings in these things?
so.
No. So everybody gets to see us talking about the approval. Everybody can put on Facebook what they think about it, and everybody can have a general discussion. I doubt if there would be anywhere near that much transparency under a ministerially appointed group of individuals.
And I think the group is very small. It
I'm
could be
sure.
1 or 2 people.
Yes. Good names.
And how did the
Yeah.
group get selected?
Yes, councillor Thorpe. Yep.
Question of clarification. I also do not support DAPS, and we've all received many emails, or at least I've received lots of emails about this. But I just want to clarify, in the submission, this doesn't change our submission as per se, because there are, I think if the legislation is going to go ahead, we should have our comments in there regardless. It just doesn't change the submission, it just makes it much more clearer that as a whole, this is something we do not support.
Yeah.
Great, I just want to clarify that.
Yes, Andrew, you're right. Yep. No other comment then? Yes?
Has this been going on now? 5? The steps?
3.
3,
Since
4?
we've been.
No, before.
Anyway.
It doesn't seem to be gathering much pace, does it? Which is good.
All right, so there's no other comment on that, so, yep, you're right. I'll put the vote for the amended motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the amended motion is carried. Is that all we have to do? That's done, thank you. Report number 15.012/25, remaking local government regulations discussion paper. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Gibson and Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Gibson, you wish to,
I thought this was fairly straightforward. I didn't have time to look through what the reasons were for councillors to attend meetings remotely. I know it's in there, but what were and I agree about not putting caps on the number of remote. That didn't make any sense to me at all.
I would need to just go find it.
Oh, sorry. But otherwise, I think it's
Yes, the reasons are clearly set out in the regulation, so it's not just a carte
just like,
blanche.
I want to be a
Correct, but it still allows emergencies
Germany if he was there.
potentially. It just allows councillors to continue to participate in the business of council when there may be urgent emergency situations and those sorts of things. I know the mayor has, it can be difficult to manage from a meeting perspective, but certainly from a participation in council meetings that, you know, the duty is for the council to participate.
In some ways, I mean, I can see why they did put a cap on the number of remote, because if it sort of disintegrates until it's just the mayor sitting there with no councillors, it sort of looks a bit silly. But
At the end of the day, the mayor's got an approval process.
yes, that's right.
Yes, councillor.
I wanted to ask about, there was a comment about the right to an allowance during parental leave. And so there was a question, I think, about whether a councillor ought to have a right, so if they take 6 months off for parental leave, whether they ought to continue receiving their councillor allowance during that time or not. And I'd like to, I guess that was vague, and I'd like to pursue an answer to that. So,
Yeah,
when a councillor takes leave through illness or for travel reasons, for their annual holiday or whatever, I think we still receive our allowance. So why ought a councillor on parental leave not receive an allowance?
Through you, Mayor, it's just raised as a question. It's certainly not put as a proposition that councillors shouldn't, but it is raised as a question generally. A councillor who's not participating as a councillor for 6 months is not undertaking the roles and functions or activities of a councillor.
That's a really naive question. What is, in a normal workplace, what is the standard on paid parental leave?
It varies from workplace to
Well,
workplace.
the federal government has a standard.
What is
that's
the minimum?
But it's at least
18
12 weeks.
or something. No, it's more than that.
It was 12 weeks. And I speak with some experience because I became a councillor last time, like a decade ago, shortly after giving birth to my third child. And I actually conducted the role of a councillor through that year, which was a bit nuts because then there was an election and I had no sleep for that year, so I didn't do anything in that. But I did the role of councillor, and I remember sitting in here chairing finance and risk or audit and risk committees with a babe in arms. And I kind of feel like if you're going to encourage a diversity of people around the table and access to that, parents and parents of young kids are some of the most community connected people in our society.
yeah, there is provision, isn't there, for childcare and.
Yes, through you, Mayor, in that case you weren't on parental
No,
leave. You were
no.
actually continuing to participate as a councillor.
Yes, but a councillor who has parental or becomes a parent and then chooses to devote time to that isn't necessarily putting aside the background work that they benefit from as a councillor. So it's a tricky thing, but I guess I wonder whether that reference could be removed from the accompanying table. My gut says that continuing to receive that allowance meets our community standards
What
of
would be the
fairness.
difference with if you had to have that amount of time off due to mental health?
Yep.
There is, so there is,
We can remove that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
so-
fine, yeah.
thanks Amy.
Just a
Yeah,
point,
yep.
if people wanted to look up the reason for audio links is section 46 or regulation 46, and it does say if out of the state for your normal employment. So there's no limitation on if it's in Timbuktu or Upper Tibet.
As long as you've
If
got
it's for
internet,
employment.
as long as you've got connection.
And it may be restricted by our external security.
Yeah, which is becoming harder and harder to do, isn't it?
Submission.
No, thank you. Any other?
There is a leave of absence here. So parental leave, a councillor is entitled to a leave of absence for parental leave for one or more meetings for a period not exceeding 6 consecutive months.
Yeah.
That's actually written into
So
it.
it's entitled.
Yeah. So it's right.
Yeah. Okay. Do I have any other, do we have to do anything with that? Yep, no worries. Nothing else, councillor Gibson? No. Okay, I'll put that motion forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. Report number 15.013/25, Local Government Association of Tasmania, General Meeting, motion 2nd April 2025. I'll refer councillors to the recommendations. We'll have a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Thorpe, do I have a seconder? Councillor Gibson. Do you wish to speak to these, Councillor Thorpe?
No, I'm pretty happy with both positions.
Do I have any other comments? Yes, Councillor Gibson.
I'd like to propose an amendment to Waratah Wynyard, our response to Waratah Wynyard's motion on oil and gas exploration and development in Tasmanian and Commonwealth waters. And I'd like to propose that we support part 2. I agree with part 1 with for Legat, that's too onerous a task. But point 2, just that Legat advocates to Tasmanian state and federal governments to not approve any new offshore oil and gas explorations and development in Tasmania and Commonwealth waters, I think I would like to support. Things we've declared a climate emergency, and it's pretty clear that oil and gas are the causes of climate change. Why wouldn't we support that?
I did, the one thing I did and ah about on this, but I just don't think, like, it's just not a local government thing, and I think
It's just advocacy.
but it's also there's so many, like, I fully support it, like, I don't question it whatsoever, but the only thing that I didn't think was appropriate is that LGAT is an advocate for local government issues, and
Climate change is a local government issue.
yeah, but it's just not tangible to outcomes for our local government, and I think that's unfair on the resources that we're contributing to and other motions that we've contributed to.
Legat.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I just don't think it's the right avenue. In respect to, there's a lot of other issues that LGAT need to help us and advocate on. But it's not saying that I don't support personally I do support the motion, but I just try to be responsible in how we use those resources in local government when there's actually no.
Well, that's why I removed the point 1, which is very arduous for Legat to fulfil. But I would have thought advocacy, just at least that's a Legat policy, would be.
I don't know, any other comments on this, guys?
I mean, it is murky, but Legat, I mean, the first, Brighton Council that Legat lobbies the Minister for Housing, Planning and Consumer Affairs. Well, local government doesn't really regulate housing either as such, but we do. Sort of. We've got
So that's
So, that's murky as well. So there's lots of things under Legat, I think, that could be seen as not necessarily core services for council, but they are sort of, I mean, the thing is though, local government has changed its role, hasn't it? Like, it used to just be
well-being and welfare.
That's exactly right. But now we're having to diversify our roles with everything. So, I mean, really and truly, there's probably not a lot that local government aren't involved in or advocating for. Absolutely, or liaising with other authorities. So I'm sort of pretty open to Legat recommending things because we work with them and we have now reached the point where local government isn't what it was 25 years ago,
And it's not saying that they have to advocate as much as
It's just on the table.
Job.
So you-
Yeah.
But your amendments, not supporting part 1, but supporting part 2.
That's correct.
It's supporting a position statement rather
Position
than.
statement,
Yeah.
rather
That's
than
where
doing
I
a lot of
was
work.
concerned, but if it's the LGAT don't support oil and gas.
I mean, and supporting and doing are two different things.
That's exactly right.
You know, like supporting just means that if something were to come up, then we would be behind it, we would support it, but it doesn't mean that we're going to implement it.
Well, that's what the point, the first part of it was very much
Exactly.
implementation, and there was a huge amount of work. And Legat said that they wouldn't do it. Anyway,
It's necessarily a massive thing either. I don't think there's much oil and gas exploration happening in Tasmania. I'd want to hope not, but anyway.
I'm not sure about that. Yeah,
I'm not sure either.
no.
All right.
Okay, so do we have to have a,
Can I ask you another one?
Yes.
The question is, it's moved, councillor Thorpe,
Yep.
at the moment without that.
Yep.
The seconder is asking that to be in there, so that needs to be clarified,
Yes.
whether or not you want to accept it.
Yeah, I'm happy to support part 2.
That moves that to support, is that what you're saying?
Part 1 is still, there's 2 parts to that
Yep.
motion. Part 1 is not supporting, but part 2 is. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
So,
But that would be not support rather than abstain.
so we
That would be
abstain or
not support
not
rather
support
than
one?
abstain.
Not support 1, support part 2.
So we're not gonna do anything about it, we're just gonna create a position that say we'd like, not like it anymore. Is that-
Yeah, so if anything ever comes up and Legat's opinion is asked, and if other councils around the state agree, then Legat will say, well, we don't support it, and we're advocating against it.
At the moment,
And they're a bigger voice than, they're our voice, they're local government's voice.
so I think, should that be the other way around? Because point 1 of this was establish a position statement and point 2 is advocate.
So we're doing the advocate, but we're not establishing a position statement.
I don't think you can advocate without having a position statement.
In a general sense, you can.
Well, Legat said, Legat's comments were that you could, that they said,
But in any case, the two are one motion. So I'm hearing that you're proposing an amendment. You'd be asking to stand up and propose amending the.
yeah, to split it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm,
But I mean, Legat's already said that if the whole thing gets up, they would not do part 1 because they don't have the means to do it. They don't have the money, but they would obviously act on part 2.
And through you, Mayor, the fact that a motion would pass that Legat advocate creates its own position statement.
Yeah, that is a position, yeah.
Without any work.
I'm more aligned with the words Councillor Thorpe used initially to talk about scope. And I think there are many things that you could reach out into through Legat, and you could argue we're at the grassroots or the coal face of coal is a bit more obvious, and we have coal deposits in Tasmania on the ground. So I think abstain is probably a better approach to this, and we want Legat to do the core business well first. So yeah.
Okay, so you then have to, do we have to move the motion to have that, to ask for it to be split?
Mover and seconder have
Yeah.
agreed.
Yep, I'll have agreed.
So
Yep.
it's now should read.
Yep.
Abstain and support. Well, the motion is that not support and,
Not
yeah,
support.
so there's 2 parts that we propose, we split the motion.
Actions are that you ask for a split.
Yes, okay.
Can I ask about the one underneath that then, while we're on a roll? We're talking about that we lobby the Tasmanian, so lobby is an active term, to support 7-star efficiency requirements. So we're 5-star now, is that right? Or 6? People? So have they talked about what the cost difference for a new home buyer would be to move from a 5 or 6-star to a 7-star? how much is that going to increase the cost of housing in Tasmania?
Not in the long term. It saves money in the long term.
For the individual, but to get into the housing market, it does. And you can always retrofit some of these things when you've got the money. Harder, won't agree, understand it. But I'm just interested if anybody's done the math. Like obviously all the hardware stores will be much happier to sell more expensive wool bats and stuff like that. But yeah, I just wonder, any gut feeling of, we're talking about adding thousands or hundreds or?
Through you, Mayor, the best that was really to come up with was actually just to highlight that is a risk. So the risk is that it may not allow for affordable housing and alternative housing opportunities such as tiny homes and those sorts of things. But it's also recognition that longer term your energy costs may balance out, but the recommendation was support done on balance. At the end of the day, it's up to you councillors around the table as to whether you think that might impact it on too much.
And how many stars are we going to get to? We've gone from 4 to 7 in the last 5 or 6 years.
I was nervous about that one too.
Yeah. When we get to 10 stars, it will be significantly more expensive for people.
Insulation is actually very cheap stuff.
But it's not just
That's not
insulation
just-
though.
Because you insulate now, don't you?
Insulate now.
It basically, you've got to increase, to get a higher star, you've just got to increase the whole insulation of the envelope.
Yeah, okay.
As a percentage of the cost of the house, it's not a lot, but it is an extra expense. You'd be in the thousands. So you have to reduce the size of the house or something else.
And then also to complement that, you have to start thinking about window placement and materials and
Yeah, a lot
so
of
it does get expensive.
A lot of it's just good planning,
Yeah, which is all good planning, but
facing your house north.
I know, but we're looking at where are those people going to get blocks to build these houses and how expensive are they going to be? And, it's so much harder to get into the market as it is. Like long term, how are our kids going to afford homes? Just buy one that hasn't got a 7-star efficiency rating and freeze to death? I mean, that's unfortunately how it is for people. They're buying old houses that they can...
And then insulating them, it's much more expensive to do it later.
Not even doing that.
Well, eventually.
Well,
No, they're cold.
Not that we necessarily agree with the use of co-pilot here in council, but the suggestion here is a 7-star home will cost between $1,000 to $3,500 for a detached house. So the increase primarily due to better insulation, higher quality glazing, and other energy efficient features. So I suppose, as you say, on a $200,000 build, $3,000 is
It
probably...
pays for itself very, very fast over the years to come.
Right. Well, now I've done the research, I'm probably more
I
happy.
think it'll cost more than that. I think that's really
All right,
Co-pilot says.
yeah, so we're
conservative.
We're back to then the changes that we need to vote on and because they've been agreed by the mover and the seconder, that we take the vote on whether we're happy with the recommendation now. Yes?
What happens if we don't want to support that? We've got to vote against the whole motion, and then what happens?
Through you, Mayor, you can split those ones that you may be contentious.
We can split them. All right, so we'll go to the vote, or do you want to move to split? What, split? You want to move to split? Okay.
Better do each individually.
Or do you want to just take that one out and do the whole lot? Because I think the rest are not contentious.
Okay,
I second that motion to split then if we need to.
okay. So Amy proposed it.
Is there a motion?
Can Mark? Yeah, you didn't.
No, I didn't know.
Yep. So we'll vote on the others without that one out. But does Thorpe and Gibson still be the,
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Okay. All those in favour of the motion for the rest of them, all bar the one that we're going to... Yep, all right. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all, councillors. And that is carried. So then now we need, we've got a...
Just a motion specifically on that one.
Yep. And we already had a mover of Amy, or is that just
No,
on
no,
the
that
split?
was just
Yeah.
The last
Yep. Okay.
council.
Yep. Yep. So now we have the Waratah Wynyard.
Is that
Yep.
the same?
Lovely. And then we just vote on it. Yep. All right.
We're voting on those amendments earlier.
Which is the,
To split,
to split it.
not support part 1 and to support part 2.
Is that right? But Amy's was,
Discussion to split on the 7-star energy efficiency.
no, no, on the other one. Yeah, sorry. Yep. Yep, you're right.
We all knew.
I think we were just talking about that.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. No, back to the, to that one. All right. So we just vote on that now. All right, is everyone clear on what they're voting on for Waratah Wynyard? All right. All those in favour of the changes to the voting on
So not
Yep,
support and
not support and support? All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, bar Burgess and Robinson. All those against? And that is Burgess and Robinson. You right with that? Yep. Thank you. Got all the wording you need? We're right to go? Thank you for that, guys. Report number 15.014/25, proposed motions for Australian Local Government Association 2025 General Assembly. I refer councillors the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Thorpe, and a seconder, Councillor Robertson. Do you wish to speak to this?
Yeah, I might just say a couple of things considering I moved this. Just admit that it is very complex, so thanks to the CEO for supporting me with this one and understanding a little bit more, because I know we've spoken about it quite a bit with medical centres and some of those issues. And ALGA being the national space for these sorts of discussions to happen, I just wanted to reiterate that we know that councils like ours across the country sometimes are filling gaps for providing medical services to communities, and often with that becomes the challenges of being financially viable or administratively burdened. So trying to provide a motion to ALGA that's a bit more constructive on some things that can actually happen now, which haven't been called on before, which I'm not sure of, but we'll try anyway. And those being the issues that we know GPs are hard to come by, and that it's going to become even harder. And we need to look at other ways of providing medical services in our communities that's not so GP-centric when that is an issue that we have to face. Not saying it'll be the issue forever, but currently that's what it looks like. And aligning the Medicare billing schedules to allow for multidisciplinary practices in regional communities or other communities to actually provide healthcare to residents and ratepayers. So I put that motion forward, and as an opportunity for a bit more national conversation about the things that we've been chatting about a lot here, thanks to some great staff that have been trying to bring us along with the journey, and I hope we are going along in that journey of a very complex issue.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Do I have any other comments on this one? Yes, Councillor.
Through you, Mayor. Just touching on this conversation, we had a conversation a while back about nurse practitioners, and I can't recall what the outcome was, but we were talking about the Signet Medical Centre and the model that Kerry uses or is trying to Is that something that could be beneficial here also? Like,
It's been directly referenced in this motion as a workable model from the perspective of delivery of care.
yeah, but could
But-
it be put in the recommendation that we might be able
It's in the
to?
motion, certainly it's in this motion.
What's it called? This,
So this is what Toby's proposing.
yes, but what was the name for that though? It had a,
No, it's a
no, there was a
multidisciplinary
training,
care
there was a specific name that she called, I can't remember what it was,
model.
but
They,
no,
they,
it was a specific program that she was trying to come up with.
they refer to it as a multidisciplinary team. So they have paramedic and nurse practitioner working together. They've won a national award. Like I said, it's referenced in Councillor Thorpe's motion as a project that is demonstrated, and we've been attempting to do through grant funding as well,
Yeah, from-
to demonstrate that the care, you can actually improve care outcomes, you can reduce costs on hospitals and improve, outcomes for patients and their families.
Yeah.
The problem is that you can't get remunerated properly for that. I think there's two.
Because of the item number thing, yeah.
So there's only two billable items
Yeah.
that a nurse practitioner can use, yet their scope of practice would mean that they should be able to bill for, other items.
Yeah.
So this is something that is being talked about nationally, because it's a national issue and Medicare hasn't kept pace with CPI, let alone real increases in in medical costs. And this, in our experience, and as demonstrated locally by an amazing model of care demonstrated in Signet, is shown to work. It's appropriate for rural areas. And as Councillor Thorpe said, this provides it's a motion that's actually, it provides a tangible action that could achieve a real outcome. It's not an advocacy, it's actually a direct, do this and you will get the right
And
outcome.
might tie in quite nicely with Signet getting ambulances and, other things, but I'm just thinking, I have to go back and check, but yes, it is correct, but she used a specific term when she came to a workshop with us, and I can't remember what it was. It'll come to me maybe, but it doesn't matter, it's probably irrelevant, but there was a specific name of the credential thing or the, I want to say what it's called.
Remember it at 3 o'clock.
I will when I go home.
Give us all a call then.
Yeah. Anyways, we digress, but yes, there was it encompassed all of that, but like under one banner. But anyways, it's okay. I'm going on tangent.
Do we have any other?
Not
I support the motion.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, unless we have any other comment, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of supporting the motion, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. And the motion is carried. Well done, Toby. Yep, thanks for that. Report number 15.015/25, electricity wayleave easement. Do I have a councillor to move? Yep, Councillor Gibson, and a seconder. Councillor Burgess. Councillor Gibson.
I have no real comment. This is similar to wayleavers that we've done before.
Okay, do we have any other comments?
Sort of a tangential question. So what's the difference between a wayleave easement versus just an easement? Or is it a technical term?
Through you, Mayor, it's a technical term. Effectively, what will be provided is a wayleave easement on the title. So the same way as a right of carriageway is known, or a pipeline easement, or something
So
like
it'll
that.
still be attached to the title.
Yes, correct.
Because I thought wayleaves were temporary versus an easement being a permanent.
Yes. So wayleaves in the sense of they're a statutory easement. They're there while it exists. But the wayleave easement just gets formalised on the title being underground.
Fair enough.
Any other? No? All right, well, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Report number 16.004/25, financial report February 2025. I'll refer councillors the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Gibson, and a seconder, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Gibson, do you have any?
I think it all looks favourable. My only questions were around the $140,000 decrease with the review of waste service budget estimates, and also I need clarification of the $1.6 million reallocation of waste contractor charges. Apparently are offset by corresponding adjustments to other expenses. So I guess, yeah, waste is a user pays supposedly in our council, and I just wanted to understand finances there.
Yeah.
So, with the waste fees, there's been a reduction in the amount of waste going through the waste transfer stations. That's why we've made an adjustment to our income estimates for the year. That's
That's at Southbridge.
at Southbridge, or actually at all the
Across
waste
all.
transfer stations. So it's across all of our waste transfer stations. So clearly they're measuring what's, coming in through the weighbridge, but also measuring what's going out. And what's going out has decreased from the same time last year.
It's a good news story.
Well, it's,
Hopefully it's not being dumped
yeah,
somewhere.
it is the intent of at a state level to reduce waste. So yeah, it is a good news story. It's also, we've introduced a weighbridge. We set prices based on what we understood from our old understanding. It's a guesstimate based on volumes we've had for a very long time. That's the experience of a general household user has been positive, that they're paying less at the weighbridge. But for large, heavyweight commercial operators, the experience has been that, they're now paying what it actually genuinely costs. And so they're taking their business elsewhere. There's some evidence that they're going north to Beretta, etc. So that's taking some of it, and that's effectively saying that it's worth them undertaking the transport costs themselves, because really the difference between here and the ones further north is that transport component. So that's part of the issue, and the other part of it is that we're finding it's the assumptions that are made on the amount of waste contribution made by curbside versus self-haul, and curbside has a greater contribution than we had previously understood. So.
What percentage or
We've
amount?
only got limited data because we've only had the weighbridge in for so long, and so we talked about it. We gave you an update similar to this when we first put this adjustment, this variation forward, and we haven't got we've got an extra month's data since then. So as we're going through the budget setting process for next year, and when we do our next workshops with you guys, we'll have more information to actually share on what the data is telling us over a longer time period, to both, correct anything else for this year, as well as set a more reasonable budget estimate for next year, which is finally, we knew this, a key component of the weighbridge is to have data on which to base our future assumptions. So yeah.
As to the second part of the question, is the difference. Really, it's those curbside collection costs. So the costs to run curbside collection, paying the contractor who pick up the bins, and the transport costs conducted by contractors, essentially.
Is that much more?
So no, there's no change. All we've done is in the budget, it was budgeted under other expenses. It's just categorised under other expenses. In reality, it's really under materials and contracts. That's where the expenditures happen. So all we're saying is that we're just moving those forecasts around between those two categories.
Yes.
I have a question, please, if I may, through you, Mayor. So I had a conversation, it was a very civil social media conversation about rubbish, and one of the commenters lives along the Channel Highway but doesn't have collection and noticed that our waste disposal at Signet wasn't opened one day. So she took the waste with her and dropped it off at Beretta and noted that it was considerably more expensive per bag than us. And she asked me why that was. And I actually couldn't remember why that was. So if someone could refresh my memory when I'm asked that next time, I'll know. But she also said that we need to be offering services to people that can't always get the rubbish to where it wants to go. So are we thinking of expanding the run anytime soon? Because she was going to do a comparison as to what it cost her to go to a tip versus the bags in the bin. But I would think that at $5 a bag, it would be cheaper to take your rubbish to the tip than what is in the bin. But I don't know because it depends on bags and everything else. But theirs was like, I want to say $11 or $9 or something. Ours is $5, isn't it? So why is that? I know that they're a group of, they charge less on stuff. Remind me, I don't know, I can't think, it's too late and I'm tired.
Every council.
Just enlighten us.
Every council sets their fees independently, so I won't comment on Kingborough's. We've set ours to be a user pays model, and we, as part of that, our bag, we knew from hearing our customers that the per bag rates, we get a lot of just individual bag drop-offs from the community, and it's a very price sensitive part of our community. And we charge the bags accordingly to what we believe they genuinely weigh. So it's actively putting that through. And we actually pulled that individual bag per bag pricing down to do that when we were adjusting other things.
7 or 9, wasn't it, to start off with?
And realistically, it's because, look, every time someone goes through and there's a transaction, there is a transaction and an administrative cost, etc. But like I said, there's a real price sensitivity for those bags, and so we've tried to keep that low, really to incentivise people to do the right thing and tip it off in the right location rather than chuck it in the bush.
So question 2 of that is, if I were to drive to Signet with 4 bags in my boot, and I were to go through the weighbridge with 4 bags, what's going to cost me the most?
Depends what's in the bags.
So if I've got 25 litre bags and they're 25 kilos each,
Very heavy.
well, just
Well, who knows?
humour
what you
me.
put in there.
So you're saying at Signet it'd be $5 a bag?
Because the bag is done by not weight, isn't it, at Signet? So realistically, I could have 52 kilos in a 52 litre bag if I could carry it, the bottom didn't fall out of it, and it's still going to cost $5. Yeah.
Because it's volumetric.
But if I go through the weighbridge, I'm going to be charged on 52 kilos.
Correct.
So it's going to cost me I nearly said a naughty word then. A lot more to go through the weighbridge. So these are the questions that I'm getting, like how do you, not you, but how do we make that more equitable? It's a fair question.
Well,
Always working on it.
Drive to Signet.
Or drive to Signet. Well, there is that, isn't there? But that's a huge difference. 10 litres, $5, 10 kilos.
On average, because that's what we use to base our estimates on
Garbage
how
bins.
we would price for the weighbridge, so the weight based, and that's where for the general residential punter, it's line ball, and generally people saying they're coming out that it's cheaper to go across the weighbridge.
Okay.
So if people wanted to game the system and they had a particularly heavy bag and wanted to drive to Signet, they could.
Yep.
But then you'd have to take into account your petrol and your time.
Well, that's
and
it,
stuff
isn't it?
like that. So,
But this is what causes some friction. So
We've built in as much equity as we possibly can in acknowledging that we're nowhere near having the financial means to build weighbridges at every single one of our centres. So if we had the demand for equity across waste services in the valley, the answer would be that we shut the other weighbridge, the other ones, the other transfer stations, and force everyone to use the weighbridge.
just have weigh scales.
No.
Without a bridge, you know you've got to have a bridge.
You need to be able to bring a truck in there.
It's also a balance. If efficiency.
Correct.
Yes.
100 cars banking up.
Wayne, one day.
I understand what you're saying. It's really difficult.
It is really difficult because also the bin collection, how many bags do you get in a bin? Like 5 in a big bin.
Yeah, it just depends.
Depends whether you stand on it and pack them down.
You don't have to go anywhere.
So that's the argument that these people will have, and it's sort of a reasonable argument to have. If they have to pay $5, it would be cheaper for them to have a bin, but it wouldn't really, because if they're only using 1 bag a week, as opposed to paying for a
You
bin,
don't use 5 bags a week.
you don't use 5 bags a week. You know, it's sort of like, oh, it's a headache.
Everybody's different, and that's where the difficulty is. You can't just cookie cutter a solution and do the same as your neighbour next door. It depends whether you've got heavy nappies in your bag or whether you separate out your compost and so forth. And so if we've got a system that's encouraging people to have options and to think about how do I use these options the best way that suits me for convenience in getting rid of my rubbish, but also to be cost effective. And maybe it's not a bag every week. Maybe it's condensing and doing a trip every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or it is separating out your organics and getting a
that's it.
compost bin. So I don't think we should shy away from it being difficult, because that encourages people to think more and participate more effectively in choices about your waste.
Yeah, that's the thing. Consumers have choices, and the best way to reduce your waste costs is to do things like what Amy's saying. Don't put mattresses in the rain, bring them in line, separate your organics, do all the things you can do to reduce the amount you bring across, because no matter across all of our stations and our next door neighbours in Kingborough and Hobart, waste prices are going north and are going to continue to.
It's an interesting thing too, because like with our, some things we're more expensive and some things we're not so expensive, but we're wrong if we charge less, we're wrong if we charge more. And like you said, every single household is unique. Mum and Dad never fill their bin, but they have to pay for the bin service. So there's this sort of thing. And then there's people that overfill their bin every 2 weeks. Is it weekly? Fortnightly? Weekly. And then sort of end up filling everybody else. So it's just such a unique situation, like rubbish. I just say to people, you can't gauge it on your next door neighbour because they might have 5 kids.
Well, that's why when you guys have in the enviable position to sign off on the annual fees and charges, we'll be bringing because it's a tough part of the job. Yeah, it's a tough part of the job,
About
but
leveraging out services.
and that's the thing. So we've brought data into that and maximising the data that we've got, and in order to demonstrate why in our community with our unique circumstances it is the right way to go. The second part of your question was about extending the curbside service. I'll remind you of the Great Wheelie Bin survey that we recently did. And last year we did increase services. Not everyone loves it, I might add.
That's why I did explain to this lady that there will be some cons as well as some pros.
Correct. And we have looked at further down the Channel Highway all the way to Verona Sands, and there's certainly pockets where it makes sense, but it is quite a long way with distributed little clusters.
I did also explain that.
So it didn't stack up when we last looked at it, but it is definitely something on our radar, and it's largely any more stuff that we do. We did that exhaustive survey with 1,500 people responding to it. That's really the backbone of a whole bunch of waste directions we will take in the future.
Well, that may have been where the question came from, because it was just after the survey, so it might have just, tweaked.
Yep.
But it is important to people, rubbish. Rubbish.
Mayor, but I think the really important thing is that we seem to have priced our waste as efficiently for our community, which maybe not every council does, but I'd hate to make that assertion of our neighbours. But just on this basis, Mayor, if I can just confirm, it looks like our forecast at the moment is that we're in surplus as a budget of 100,000, which is a turnaround of about 170, but on a $30 million budget, or whatever it is, that's not bad change. But well done for being ahead of the game rather than behind the game. Is there anything that we haven't costed in, like depreciation, that will suddenly come at the end of the year and bite us in the
Proverbial.
Where?
Tracy, but you can answer that. While Paddy's away, get a...
Look, there can always be some changes go through, and we're yet to go through and finalise our asset additions and capitalisation process here. However, I've tried to factor what I know into those sort of projection updates.
Yep, no,
Yeah, so it's our best guess at the moment. So I would hope it would come somewhere close to that.
no, very good. And we, if I remember, we were doing an asset re-evaluation study on, did we tender somebody to do some of that
We
last
do
year?
revals on a rolling basis.
So there's nothing, there's not anything that we know that we haven't re-evaluated for 10 years and suddenly we're going to find it's gone through the roof?
Not now, no. So, but revals every time they add
They go up.
expense. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So, do you want to talk to roads and bridges from this year?
So
It's a good news story.
Yeah, we conducted the research on assets, which is roads, bridges, kindergarten footpaths this year, and we have seen 20% increase bridge replacement cost over the last 2 years. So 20% each year we're talking about.
But we factored that into this budget, or is it
That's the
We're factoring it into next year's
next year's
budget.
budget? Oh, good.
Correct.
And we've got lots, we've got, I can't remember what the figure was, but millions of dollars worth of bridges over the next.
Yeah, we've got 280 odd bridges physically, and yes, it's worth millions, and tens of millions, and it has a material impact on our budget. And as Frank said, it's going up double digit year on year.
And it's one of the things that Audit Office was talking about too, was asset management and depreciation. Yes. Sorry, Frank, yes.
Just really, just probably give you an idea how much those bridges cost. We're talking about a single bridge serving one property. This kind of typical bridge we're talking about. We're talking about $350 to $400 to replace nowadays, and the prices keep going up. They're expensive
We'd be better
assets.
off buying some of those houses and, anyway.
That's a discussion for later.
Yeah, so that's all. We've depreciation centre is built into current budget, so we're there with that. But yes, this is all the stuff that is leading into revals each year, lead into the following years, and the long-term financial
Because a
plan.
few councils have been caught out with being behind on their revaluation, so
Yeah.
good to hear we're up to date.
No, that was under our previous director of finance. Really started a strong process that was fixed there, and that reval process is yet, as you say, on a rotating basis to keep abreast of it all.
Okay. So is there any other financial questions? No? All right, so you don't need to close, Councillor Gibson? All right, well, I'll put that motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. All right. Up to report number 17.002/25, Signet Medical Centre proposed extension. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Recommendation. Yep, Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Robinson as a seconder. Councillor Armstrong, do you wish to?
Just briefly, Mayor. I think this might be a good thing. I think an extension might work well because I know that they're so busy and I know that there's a big need for medical and I know that we're all having issues with everything. I like the recommendations. I think they will work quite well, given that it has to be a doctor's surgery until 2032, was it? I would like to see it personally, with the construction, kind of blend in with what's already there and not be something too stand-out-ish. The room's there, the parking's there, the ambulance bay's there. It just makes sense for me to whack another couple of rooms on and offer some more services to the community.
Okay, do I have any other comments or statements about this one?
So, Mayor, there said in the report, there said to be some suggestion about uncertainty about the rate that the rent increase that was proposed would be sufficient. And I didn't quite yet if the recommendation was saying we are going to renegotiate that rent independent of what the provider has told us that we should increase the rent by.
There is a review.
So the last recommendation there is that we'd review that lease rental and also clarify the maintenance responsibilities and insurance responsibilities of the lessee.
So we'll review that on the basis of our cost model, not what was suggested to us.
Sorry,
Because I think there was a suggestion in the paper that the suggested rate increase might not meet the cost to council.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that we're gonna determine the rate on the basis of our cost, not.
yeah, that'll be our position, yes.
It was just a bit uncertain of what we were gonna agree to or not, yeah.
It's a sort of tricky thing when they're paying for the
Well, the
extension.
government's paying for it. I think it's a grant, wasn't it, that they.
Or is it
Yeah, it's a grant. It's a,
cost of the lessee?
And because it's our property though, it's our depreciation over time and it's our
Yeah.
yeah. But we're.
Which we have anyway.
Well, the extension will add to it, but don't get me wrong, I'm very happy that they want to expand.
Right,
But it needs to be fair for
right,
everybody.
it's got to be fair to the general ratepayer, and they are a commercial tenant. So it's fair's fair. So it is absolutely, we support it, but let's just make sure, we're not,
The same thing would
ratepayers
happen.
aren't disadvantaged in this.
We got the grant to do the medical centre at Dover in Ewan Regional Care's building. So, it's just got to be,
It didn't cost us $500,000 more, and I do appreciate that any cost overruns will belong to the leasee, not us. Yes.
So will the review of the lease and all happen prior to the going ahead with the extension?
Yeah, so it's subject to these following conditions. So our permission is subject to these. So yes, we need to go and have a conversation with these as part of their submitting of the application. And our provisional support, I suppose.
yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Oh, I think if we were talking about a different business, we might be having a different conversation. But I think at this point in time,
Medical.
with medical, an extra 2 rooms could make a significant difference, I think, to people
Well done.
at this time.
Yep. Okay. Well, if you,
Yep, thank you, Mayor.
All right, well, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Report number 18.003/25, Community Grants 2024-25. Refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Yep. Councillor Thorpe and Councillor Armstrong. Do you wish to talk
I just
to?
have 2 very quick questions which apply to this motion and the one following. Is that, do we have a plan to actually share the story on these recipients? And the second one, how are we going to manage all these conditions that we're putting on? They're very small.
Can you repeat, sorry, through you, Mayor, can you repeat the first question?
So just, do we have a plan on how we're going to share the story of these grant recipients with community? Because ultimately it's their money being given to community groups or individuals. And the second one, how are we going to manage all these conditions?
I'll answer the second question first because that's the easier one. We'll manage it through our team. So we'll be monitoring as we do with all our grants, we have an acquittal process.
Yeah.
On the first one, certainly I think it's a good suggestion. We can do some media, not media or comms or posts on those projects. And you would have seen in the conditions that we're making sure that there's public access to these things, so to these projects. So certainly we can promote those through our comms channels.
Okay, any other questions, Toby? No? Do we have any other questions on community grants? I love to see the vegetable garden program. there, one of the schools to help with that. I think that's great, and it's good to see one of our hall committees in there being proactive and doing a book exchange and a community garden. So I think they are all community back into the community. Yeah. So
That's what we're aiming to do, you know, with all of these legislative things that we talk about. It's like enabling community.
Great to celebrate that.
yeah, no, definitely. Yep. And I think as councillors we can be proactive in taking notice of what some of these are and maybe having a look and attending or just going and checking on progress once the grant's been awarded and coming back and giving, because we must always remember if we go to any of these and we get some photos or get some information, it's always good to share it with comms to be able for them to be able to promote that we were there and that we've seen how good the garden's growing or the bowls were or whatever it might be. So yeah. So well done on that. So do we have any other comments on those? No? Well, I'll put that forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Report number 18.004/25, Creative Yuan Grants. I'll refer you to the recommendation. And I'll ask for a councillor to move the motion. Councillor Armstrong and a seconder. Councillor Gibson. Do you wish to speak on this, Councillor Armstrong?
No. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think all the conditions seem really fair when you read through those. I think they're really good. They're requesting them to make sure they're open to everyone or whatever it might be. So well done on the people that have set these up and done the evaluation. So if that can be passed on, thank you. So if we have no other comments on those, I'll ask all those in favour of this motion, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. 19.013/25. We're about to move into closed council, so I'd like to thank those that are attending from home tonight. The recommendation is that the meeting now be closed to the public as at
8:14 p.m.
Pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedures Regulation to discuss the following matters: confirmation of minutes, general reports, closed council, Yuan Valley Community Awards and a tender for finance. And is that for HRIS, is that for finances or is that?
HR and information system.
There you go. Do I have a councillor to move a motion to go into close, please? Councillor Thorpe and a seconder, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's all councillors. I advise that in accordance with the Yuan Valley Council audio recording of council meeting policy, recording of the open session of this meeting ceased at
8:15 p.m.